It's under construction. I probably have 40 pages left to do, but it's due to the publisher in October. So this whole summer I'm just gonna be busting through it, trying to finish it up. That's the book that probably means the most to me, to my heart, because I grew up Mormon. So for me, growing up Mormon, you don't really know anything about the church, really, unless you investigate it yourself. You know the romanticized story of Joseph Smith, but you don't really know Joseph Smith. And so getting into this project was like, now I'm going to teach myself this thing. It's like a weird journey that I've been on, because I didn't research it in advance. I sent Abrams an illustration so they could see what my drawing style was like, with a list of...
Abrams, you have like 500 books on the market, and Abrams still needed proof that you could draw?
Exactly, yeah. So I guess so. And then a bullet point of like his life. And so that was it. And they just said, okay. And since then, that was a couple of years ago, I've just been on this journey. I've been traveling to all the historic locations.
You've been spending a lot of time in Utah?
No, not because this is before Utah.
Okay.
So this is actually like all like Ohio, upstate New York, Illinois. I went to Nauvoo a couple months ago, and I've just been like immersed in this like Mormon history, But it's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. In terms of this specific story, or just how you want to write stories going forward?
This specific story. I don't know if I'm going to do anything like this after this. Like I feel like I'm kind of getting it out of my system, but when I first started doing comics, that was one of the first things I was drawing, was like Joseph Smith. Like I was like, but I didn't really feel like I was at the level where I could actually do it justice. So I just kind of waited.
When you were like a kid or younger or teenager?
Oh, this is like when I got into comics as like, this is going to be my career.
If you were career focused, the idea was to do a Joseph Smith book?
Yeah, absolutely. But when I first started, I wasn't sure, because I was like 21 at the time. Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was just going to make some like irreverent kind of mean thing, like
Art Crumb style.
Yeah, that was more the style I was at the time too. Yeah. So like hey, here's Joseph Smith, and it's about his adventures with his monkey named Moroni, and it was just like junky. So I always had some idea I was going to do it, but I never felt comfortable enough. And then I did this book a couple years ago that Paul Buell wrote about Johnny Appleseed. I just illustrated it, and the process of that got me so comfortable working in like 19th century style, like getting into that world, like the clothing and all that stuff, that when I finished that, I was like, I think I might be ready to take on that Joseph Smith book now.
I imagine Joseph Smith as a character wouldn't have worked particularly well with this sort of monkey sidekick story, because he's not really an established character. You could do something like that with Jesus, where everybody has like sort of a cartoon shorthand version of Jesus. Mm-hmm. What were the bullet points, and how much has this story just generally diverged from that?
It hasn't really all the bullet points that I had on the list I've been hitting. So it was just the important things of like the vision in the sacred grove where he sees God and Jesus and they tell him not to join any church. The appearance of Moroni at his bedside one night, telling him about the golden plates are buried in this hill not far from here.
So it's a telling of Joseph Smith that's in line with the Book of Mormon?
Well, the Book of Mormon is not about Joseph Smith. The Book of Mormon is the golden plates that he dug up. Yeah,
but it's in line with the mythology of.
Yeah, but it's more so. Like, for example, he never in real life told the story about being a boy and going and praying in the woods and seeing God and Jesus until 1835. Like, so his church had already been established for a few years, and before he started saying that. So I illustrated it like that. I didn't start the book off with him as a boy doing this. I illustrated that scene when he told the story of that scene happening. And there's a lot of things like that. Like I'm trying not to, I'm pulling back on the romanticism of it, because it's not my job to do the kind of book that the church would pay for and publish. Yeah. I'm doing the book that just tells the straightforward story of who this person was, the environment they grew up in, and the religion that they formed, which has somehow become successful. So it's just a straightforward story. It's not for Mormons, and it's not for anti-Mormon. It's just for anybody who just wants to know what this thing is.
It would be a lot more lucrative if it was the church was behind it, I would assume.
Yeah, that's what Josh is saying too.
I mean, you are exploring sort of the mythology of it, but you're exploring it as the stories that he's telling.
Realistic, yeah. So like how it would be. So he was out working the fields with his dad and his brothers, and he was feeling really sick, and he went home, and he told his father about like, oh, last night this thing happened. And in my version, I didn't draw him in bed seeing the angel. I drew the father telling the mother about this weird story that their son told him. And I drew it that way.
You're not trying to dissect it or, explore whether or not he was genuinely seeing these things or was potentially a huckster.
Yeah,
that's not your job.
That's up to the reader to determine that. And I sent I have about 240 pages drawn already, and I sent them to my friend Dan, who's like the publisher at Kilgore Books, Dan Stafford, just to get like another person's opinion on this. Like, do you think this works or whatever? And we had a discussion about it, and he's like, yeah, like you can't, the way you've written it, like, it's not it's just kind of like, here's what it is, and it's up to you to figure out like what you believe in all of this, as a reader. And that's the perfect way to do it.
Why did you leave the church?
Well, it's a long story. My parents got divorced. I was raised in the church. My parents were raised in the church, but my mom fell away from the faith. And so my parents got divorced, and I was still young enough that I went with my mother, and my mom had us excommunicated. Yeah.
So the church left you.
Yeah, they stopped bothering us after a while. But I still have kind of a relationship with them. Like, I have at Brigham Young University, they have a file where they collect a lot of my original artwork. They have all of the Hypo's original artwork there. They have my hot date.
So you're like an alumni of the Mormon church.
They have a file, and they came to my house like last year and did like a long video interview with me, just talking about my life for the files. So like, if there's any students there at BYU who want to write a paper on me.
Yeah, I was listening to you talk about this in another interview, and I think your girlfriend's mother was over and was just like, what is going on with Noah? Right. Are they able to, and I say this as somebody who has a lot of Mormon friends, but obviously, like, as a religion, it's very much driven by mission, proselytizing. Are they able to sort of come over and talk to you as somebody who has, moved past the church and not proselytize?
Yeah, because it wasn't about, they weren't trying to get me back in the church. They were interested in my story as a person who the church has failed, basically.
They take that on themselves.
Yeah, they have this whole, like, we need an account of what, the Mormon church has this, like, promise of, like a beautiful family and a tight community and stuff like that. And what happens if that doesn't work? What happens in the cases where that falls apart? And that's basically what the interview was about, what I did with them, was just my own history in that, and the outcome where I'm drawing mean comics about their prophet and a monkey.
In a way, I kind of appreciate that, because, there's a sense with a lot of Christianity where if you leave the church, it's your own failing. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like they're sort of like accepting that there's some sense that if some people are leaving them, like maybe there's something they could do right or do better.
Sure, yeah.
Why was it important for you to tell that story after, being so far removed from it?
Well, I wanted to investigate it because when I turned 30 years old, I had this like sudden thing where I started like looking backwards on my life at that point. And I did a lot of comics.
At the ripe old age of 30?
No, at 30, yeah, because I was like, well, all right, well, it's like my 20s are now done.
Sure.
That's a story that's closed.
It's a milestone.
Yeah, like now I'm going to enter my 30s. Who do I want to be when like going forward? And like, was I pulled out of this faith that I was raised in, not on my own? Like, was that a decision that was made for me that I would regret if I looked into it and felt it, So like, getting involved in the history of the church has been kind of like trying to figure out my own identity in a way, because I'm like, how do I feel in my heart? Like, do I have like a burning in the bosom, as they say, about this stuff? As an adult now, how do I feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, you're 2/3 or halfway or whatever through it now. Do you have a burning in your bosom?
Not for the Mormon church. I really don't. No. I went to a lot of the holy sites, like me and John Porcelino went to Nauvoo together. And even John was like, this is really, you can really feel that this is like a holy place that has an energy to it.
John's a very spiritual person.
Yeah, he picked up on that. And I agreed with him. But it's like you have all these, like, it's a gathering of all these people that feel, they bring this energy with them, and you can feel
it. There's no maybe value necessarily in the place itself, but it's what people are bringing to it.
I think so. I think so. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I don't, working on this book has made me realize that, like, that's just not me. Like I'm not Mormon. Yeah. And I wonder if I would have found that out if I had stayed in the church and grown up with it. I wonder if I'd be a 35-year-old Mormon still, or if I would have found that out, and left eventually anyway.
I'm sure that your life probably would be very different.
Yeah, that's true. I'd have a bunch of kids.
Yeah. Yeah. How soon after the excommunication did you lose faith?
Pretty soon. My mom was very very good at like unplugging us.
Okay.
My mom became like a Wiccan after that.
Oh, wow.
So she went like it was.
You didn't follow her on that journey?
No. But I did go to like, she was a part of like, Artist Way.
Yeah.
Like that. She'd go to these like Artist Way meetings where it was like a bunch of hippies would like sit around in a circle and stuff and it was like talk about creativity.
She went just entirely in the other direction.
Oh yeah, it was so weird. And then, like the first vagina I ever saw was like a vagina candle she brought. And it was like burning in the house. And I'm like, what is that weird shape?
Yeah, that predates the Gwyneth Paltrow thing.
Yeah.
It's really at the forefront of vagina candles.
Yeah. But I've talked to people about it and it's like, of course, because like Wiccan, it's all like female empowerment.
Sure.
And you're leaving like a church, which was all about like patriarchy, and it was very masculine. And so I think it was my mom's way of like finding her own identity as a woman.
Did you feel like you needed to find an identity outside of church, or did you feel a need to sort of explore other spirituality? Like I know, so I'm Jewish and I was bar mitzvahed, and I definitely, right after the bar mitzvah, right around that sort of like early teenage time was when I was really out there looking for something else.
I guess I'm kind of at that point now. I'm looking around and trying to see if any, I was just telling Josh, if anybody's listening to this, I just had lunch with Josh.
Hopefully somebody's listening to this.
And yeah, we talked about that. Like, I can go into any church on a Sunday service and sit down and feel perfectly comfortable there. And it's because I did it every Sunday growing up.
Comfortable is different than believing.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, right? I mean, I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know. I still have to seek that out, but I don't think I'm going to wind up a Christian or anything. I don't know.
I talked to a lot of cartoonists about this. You said you listened to the Dan Clowes thing, and this is something that we talked about quite a bit, was this idea of working on a book for so long, and this is your longest book. I mean, I guess excluding Fante Bukowski, which is multi-part.
A big brick, yeah.
Yeah, but sort of the longest, I guess, contiguous book, that if you're doing your job well, you are occupying that headspace. But I assume that can drive you crazy. I mean, you're living in, 19th century America. And
it's been weird because I live in South Carolina now.
Yeah.
And it's a very Christian place. Everybody, one of the things they ask you is like, what church you all belong to? That's a thing.
That's like it before they ask what you do for a living.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I've been in a really weird, it's been a strange, kind of religiously insulated place to be and work on this.
How do you answer that question now?
I just say, I don't know yet.
That's the worst possible answer because those are exactly the people who are going to try to get you to come over to their side.
Oh, the whole world is my church. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I take breaks a lot. Like I just did that Grateful Dead book like at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was, I'll never make that mistake again of working on two big books at the same time. That was not fun.
Did it seem like a good idea from the standpoint of, that you would be able to take a break from one and move to the other?
Yeah, I have that. I always spin several plates at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm always working on different books. And so it was just like another book to put on there. But the deadline for the Grateful Dead is what was really difficult because they needed it
Grateful
very
deadline.
soon. Yeah, the Grateful exactly. So that definitely that wasn't very fun.
Do you feel like either or both of them potentially suffered from that decision?
No, not really. No, because I just stopped working on the Joseph Smith for a while, and at a certain point, I'd been trying to do like a page for Joseph Smith and a page for Grateful Dead every day, and it wasn't. I was just going to die. And Amy, my partner, was just like, "What you have to do is just stop working on Joseph Smith, and just put all your attention on the Grateful Dead, and just get that done, get that out of here." And she was right. So I just like put the Joseph Smith stuff aside and just went full force on Grateful Dead and got it out when they needed it.
It seems like you've got a pretty well regimented schedule. I mean, when did you switch over to that? When did you, decide that in order to actually get this work done, you were going to need to essentially do like a 9 to 5?
Once so my partner and I bought a house in South Carolina, and she has a 9 to 5 job. It became kind of apparent that like the only time I was really going to see her is when she wasn't at work.
Yeah.
And I was just going to start a schedule of like when she goes to work, I'm going to go to work, and I'll work up until like I know she's about like 10 minutes, 20 minutes before she gets home. I'll stop. So she gets home around 5:30. So I just started working 9 to 5 and just trying to appreciate that amount of time. Like, this is what I have to get done. And then after that, we're going to spend time together, and then I can have a healthy relationship as well as a healthy work life, And it's worked out really well like that. I mean, I've been able to get a lot of work done because when I was single and like living in an apartment alone, I would just draw until like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Just like eat pizza in bed and stuff. And it was just horrible. So yeah, it's been way better.
I get this sense, sort of having heard you talk about South Carolina, that you're almost, I don't know if isolated is the right word, but maybe there aren't a lot of distractions other than your girlfriend from getting work done.
I just got my driver's license.
Okay.
And so like now I'm able to like go to comic shops and stuff like that on my own. But yeah, it's like a little, it's called Cottontown, my neighborhood.
Okay.
Because it used to be cotton mills there. That's why.
Yeah, I was going to say there's
it's
lots to unpack there.
It's very southern. And it's it's kind of like in the middle of downtown, but Columbia is not. It's a little big town,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty quiet place to live, and not a lot of like alternative comics going on around there. So
you never had trouble motivating, though.
No, I haven't. It's true. It's just what I do.
You've got this sort of strict schedule now, but that wasn't put in place because you were having trouble getting out of bed and drawing.
No, I love drawing. Yeah, in fact, like I it's like an energy that I need to like expel. So like after I get home from this trip, I'll draw like so much you won't even believe it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this book that Josh gave you. Mm-hmm. And Josh is going to very much appreciate all the shout outs in this episode. But you don't have a sketchbook with you.
I do.
Oh, you do?
In my
okay.
coat pocket, yeah.
So you're pretty constantly drawing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You just need to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to describe
it's like
it.
it's like working out a muscle.
I'm a cartoonist. Like once I remember when I first started trying to be a cartoonist, like I didn't like drawing. It was painful to draw. Like it was something that I really had to force myself to like because I wasn't good at it and I didn't know how to. It just felt like what I imagine like drunk driving would feel like. I just didn't have any control or anything, and I eventually over time I started to really like it and I started to feel really comfortable when I was doing it. And, I don't know. I just like it. I like doing it.
What drew you to something that you were uncomfortable with and bad at?
Because I had no other option. Like, I
mean, you could work your way up a Panera.
That's exactly right, yeah. I was just telling, and man, we keep bringing up Josh Frankel. I'm sorry. It's just because I only just saw him. But with him, I was talking about, like, man, I always had this, like, frustration with my life because I felt like if I had just been born to a more put together family, I really could have been something in this life. Like I know I could have like gone to a good school,
What does success look like for you? I mean, you must accept that you've achieved success in what you've done.
Yeah, but I like this. I mean, like this where we are right now. Like I like this kind of
corporate
job
office.
Oh gosh, I would love that. I would love the security of that. And that's what success is to me, is like security. Cartooning doesn't offer you that, and so I always feel on edge. Like I can work really hard, but you never know when it's over. It
seems to me from the outside that this sense of drive that you have might be a side effect of having grown up poor and watched people struggle. Like knowing that because all this could go away at any time. You need to work your ass off and have as many, as you said, plate spinning at once as possible.
Yeah, that's probably true. There's like a desperation that comes from that,
It struck me going back and reading the Fante Bukowski stuff, really early on, as you were, I think you were really kind of trying to get into your rhythm, that first book. It was strips, right?
Well, it was just such a joke.
Yeah.
Like, it was just making fun of writers that I would see at like zine festivals who like were selling their poetry zine, and they had this big like overblown kind of idea of themselves and stuff. And
I think the thing that you really touched on is he's in bed and he's waiting for inspiration to strike, and that very specifically is not a problem that you've ever had.
No, that's true.
You never really felt yourself kind of waiting around for the perfect idea?
No, I'm not that kind of cartoonist who's going to have a perfect idea. I just I mess around. Like right now at my house, besides the Joseph Smith book, I just started working on this comic called Apocalypse Cat. Okay. And it's just going to be about a cat who, like, after the world ends, it's like a cat navigating this apocalypse. And it's just, like, such a silly idea. But it's just, like, drawing in a sketchbook, and then, like, that's pretty funny. I mean, I have, like, a lot of gags for something like that, so I'll just keep going with it. But that's, like, so different than Joseph Smith,
Do you see something like that, though, eventually building out into a narrative? The way that Fante Bukowski, again, appears to me to have started as a gag strip and built itself into something bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
Do the dots start connecting on the gags and telling a larger story?
Definitely. Because what you do is, like, you plant things that you don't really know why you did that, but then later on you're like, oh, that connects to this. It's just the way your brain works somehow. Like, it's looking for connections all the time. And you plant little seeds in different scenes that later on will magically be like, that's the answer I needed, was this thing I drew back here or something,
Do you abandon a lot of stuff?
A lot of projects?
Yeah.
I have one book that I started that was a pretty dark story, kind of similar to like St. Cole, but then Trump got elected, and I just felt like I'm already like, now the world just seems really dark. I don't want to exist in this dark fiction that I've been writing, and I just abandoned that and then did a Fante Bukowski 2 or 3, I can't remember what year. So that's the only one I abandoned, but I didn't even necessarily abandon it. I'll go back to it at some point, but it just seemed like that was just like the biggest depression, and I couldn't go and concentrate on some dark story. I was like, I don't want to give the world this. Here's something bad.
Were you worried about the world? Were you worried about the readers, or were you worried about your own state of mind?
Well, all of the above. I mean, I didn't really want to give it. Like, Nick Dranasso, when he finished Sabrina, I remember he called me on the phone like, yeah, I finished this book, but like, it was the same thing. Like, it's just too dark. I don't know. I might shelve this. Like, he'd called Drawn Quarterly and been like, hey, can I just like not publish this? And they gave him some extra time to think about it.
This like perfect work of art that I made.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
yeah,
that like seems to have kind of predicted the future. In a way.
I know, but it was this weird thing where like all of a sudden you became aware of like what you were contributing to the culture, and it felt so dark at that time. Like, oh my gosh, do you remember that? Like the next day, I was just like walking around Columbus, Ohio, where I was living at the time, and it was just empty. And it just felt so dark.
Yeah. I was in, Manhattan at the time, and I was walking around, and I always described everyone as looking like, Charlie Brown with like the cloud above his head.
Oh, sure.
Or it's just like, it's a bad comparison. I wasn't here for 9/11, but I suspect in a sense that was kind of as close as you could feel without, like a great physical human tragedy here.
And this is the city that bred that guy.
Yeah,
where he came from.
I live in Queens now, so I'm very much in the borough. But he had to move over here to really.
That's the only book I abandoned, was that one, and eventually I'll come around to finishing it.
You get the sense that sort of all of these sort of seeds you're planting are eventually you're gonna see them out.
Yeah, I think so.
You had mentioned Pinocchio sequel.
Oh yeah. I was gonna do that, but then when I Googled, it just seemed like it was an idea that had already been done.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be funny. It's like, what do you do? It's like you're basically like you were a wooden boy who's turned real, and then like how does the rest of your life compare to this magic that happened in your childhood? It's like a child actor who like has grown up and is now like what do I do? It just felt like a funny idea for like a Pinocchio sequel. But then I started looking at them like there's a lot of like Pinocchio graphic novels. I don't know if I really want to do another one.
These are things that you did sort of leave behind, but you left them behind in a nascent enough stage. Mm-hmm. So like the dark book is an example of something where we actually started on the project and left it behind.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a chapter and a half done in a folder on my computer.
Yeah.
Of it. And I remember I even wrote to Eric Reynolds at Fantagraphics like, I'm working on something I think is going to be real swell, but I never finished it. So, and the book is called I Will Be All Right. That's what.
Have you gotten better about budgeting your time?
I guess so. I mean, the 9 to 5. That's
Well, I just mean as far as perhaps not taking on too many projects.
Oh no! I've never been good at that. I take on everything. I take on way too much stuff.
I mean, is there just a sense that you could like drop dead in any minute, so you might as well
have
big of a sort of a
big library.
Yeah.
Well, I always felt like, I'm probably not going to be like the author who like has. Like a blankets or like my favorite thing is monsters or whatever. Like I'll probably never have a book that's like that giant. So
giant in terms of like physically or in
no,
terms
I mean
of...
like as big like as great of a story where it's like universally loved and all this stuff. Like I just don't think I'm that kind of an author. But like I will probably like achieve notoriety. I don't know.
Notoriety.
By the time I'm dead, just from like having a giant library of books, like that cartoonist Tommy Ungerer.
Yeah.
He had like 140 books by the time he died.
Or Kilgore Trout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're edging closer to a place where you could have that one sort of big perfect book?
But I don't know, because I feel like that stuff happens on accident. Like my favorite thing with monsters is. I don't think she knew that it was going to be so.
That one for sure. I mean, absolutely, because and she's great. She's on the show, but in a way, it does almost feel like this like work of an outsider artist.
Yeah.
But blankets. I mean,
yeah, that's true. Blankets is a bad example, but like I don't have the brain that can like be like, here's what's something that's gonna all the kids are gonna love this.
Sure.
I just can't do that. I just do what interests me.
Yeah,
and that's
which I think is what she did, and it worked out for her.
It was amazing, incredible. But I don't see that happening.
Part of it could be that those books specifically, like, so much of their lives went into that, and you. I mean, do you ever see yourself putting yourself in a place where you can just focus on one single long project for an extended period of time?
Joseph Smith is like the closest I've ever had to that.
Is it just living in capitalist society?
Making a living?
Yeah, I mean, just as far as, like, I talk about this living in New York. I suspect it's less of the case in Columbia or even Columbus, but as you said, you're always on this kind of razor-thin margin, so you can't, like, disappear from society and work on a book for, 10 years.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm a working cartoonist, I just like to work. I don't know. I don't know if I could even just focus on one thing to the exclusion of all other things for long. I just don't think I could do that, honestly.
Aside from that sort of dark book that is, perhaps temporarily shelved, is there a story that you feel like you've been wanting to tell but haven't been able to crack?
Yeah. It would be like the sequel to this book I did called One Dirty Tree about like my early childhood. It would be about my family split and my split from the Mormon church. That's the book that I've tried. I feel like I've tried to write that story so many times and I can't figure out a way to do it correctly.
I got the sense that you maybe don't want to get that personal about your immediate family going forward.
Well, I probably shouldn't.
You got some closure in an issue of Blammo, and it sounds like you've kind of moved on from that just for kind of their own sake.
Yeah, I mean, I should, but I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I know I should.
I do. But I'm just bringing it up because this sounds like your mind has perhaps changed since a couple of years ago when you discussed this.
Yeah. Well.
So you feel like the story is still waiting to be told.
But it's a personal story. Like, I don't really need to bring a lot of my siblings into it.
Yeah.
I could just focus on how it affected me, to just all of a sudden, like, have your worldview dropped, I could do something like that. And I might do that, but I just don't know. Is that a short story? Like, is that a book? I don't know how to do it.
Now being however many years removed from it, how cataclysmic of an event was that?
Well, I'm a cartoonist.
So things are going great.
I guess I don't know what the other dimension, what my life is like, in that dimension where, like, I stayed in the church and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not even talking, like, alternate realities. I'm just saying, like, how much did your life feel upended?
Oh, it felt terrible.
Yeah.
I had one pair of pants growing up.
So it wasn't just the church. It was just like all of these things that were kind of tied together.
The structure that was my family just fell apart, and suddenly nobody was watching me, and I was 12 years old going to Target to steal shopping carts and roll them around my neighborhood, and like doing all these dumb things like that. Like, I don't know. I had nobody paying attention to what I was doing in my childhood, and they really missed it, So, I mean, that's something that hurts me now, and I feel I have a certain amount of anger about it because I feel like I could have really benefited from that. And I hadn't seen my dad in like 13 years, and I went to one of my brother's weddings, and my dad was there, and I just couldn't take it. And we had like a discussion where he's just like, "What? Like, what do you wish? Like, what did I take from you? Like, what do you wish I had done? Like." And I was like, I just wish that I could have become like a man with you around, because he wasn't there at all for it. He missed all of it.
He didn't understand the
No, he didn't understand it. And he told me, he's like, I didn't want to be a father. Like, he said, I'm somebody who should not have been a father. But that's not something you tell your kid,
Yeah, and that's maybe a mistake you make like once, but...
yeah, not 9 times.
Yeah.
But he, it was that religion that he was in. He felt like you had to do it. And he, and it's like the last time I'd seen him, I was a boy. I was still like a young guy, and I had only seen him at that point because my sister got married, and I was at that wedding and I saw him. So it's like, come on, like, you're my father. I'm half of you, and like I have to fight for interest in me.
I mean, it sounds like in hindsight, you're more conscientious about not necessarily hurting people by writing about them, but because of all of these things, you probably weren't too concerned about hurting his feelings specifically.
No, I wasn't. And that book, One Dirty Tree, I went pretty hard on him. I feel bad about it now. I kind of decided I wasn't going to write mean things about my dad anymore.
Yeah.
There's a short story I did called The Lizard Laughed, and he read that story, and he knew like automatically that was about him. And I was like, well, I changed your name. No, I didn't even change his name. I'm such an asshole. But like now it's like that short story is like being turned into a short film.
Oh.
So I feel...
Yeah. Are you less angry just generally in life now that you're old?
Yeah, I am. I am less angry at him. I forgive him. I understand. Like, he's not a perfect person. Why would he be? And everybody...
He struggled. He had health mental health
he had
struggles.
mental health problems, and I don't know. It's just like just can't be mad anymore. What am I going to carry that stuff with me? I'm a grown adult at this point, you know.
It's interesting to sort of look at the Joseph Smith book through that lens specifically, where if you had written a book about the Mormon Church 10 years ago, it probably would have been an angrier book.
Absolutely.
And you probably would have been taking it out on the church.
And my dad, yeah.
Yeah.
Because my dad is still very much Mormon. He's like, they call him Saint Holiday.
What does that mean?
It's just like his name was Harvey, but when he was in school, he was always skipping class.
Yeah.
So he got the nickname Holiday. And then when he went really hard on being a Mormon, got the nickname Saint Holiday. So, and he's actually helped me a lot with the book because I've been stuck on a lot of things, and he's such an expert about the church that he's like helped me out.
The book brought the two of you closer together?
Yeah. I call him. We have like long conversations now and stuff. And I told him I forgive him for all that stuff, and we can just like get along as two adults now, and we do. We just talk about whatever. He tells me a lot about his childhood, stuff I didn't know about, you know, and stuff about my family that I didn't know about. Because when my parents got divorced and I went to Arizona from New Jersey, I just lost all the info on my family's history from New Jersey, you know, which goes back very far.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know about any of that stuff. And that's a part of my own identity that I was blind to.
God, Saint Holiday is such a good name. It's such a perfect microcosm of somebody who is devoted to the church, but just kind of skipped out on other things.
Mm-hmm. Well, he started over. He got remarried and stuff.
Okay.
You know? But he knows everything. Jeez, he knows everything about the church.
He's a scholar.
He really is. He can read Hebrew. He's like really into like studying the Bible in Hebrew and stuff.
He didn't just read the Wikipedia article. He read the sources. He clicked the links at the bottom.
That's right.
Has he read the book or the draft or pieces of it?
No, I'm hesitant to let him do that because I don't want anybody who's too faithful to nitpick this book that's in the process, because I don't want them to influence the way that the vision that I have for it. So we've talked about it, and he's like, I know it's not going to be like a perfect book, but I'm happy you're doing it and stuff. So he knows it's not going to be a book that'll be selling at the Deseret bookstore in Salt Lake City or something,
Desert Island in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah.
Are you concerned? I mean, in the same way that you've kind of grown as far as like portraying people in your immediate life, are you concerned about backlash from a book about Joseph Smith?
I anticipate it. I'm not afraid of it. There will be a lot of write-ups about it. A lot of people are getting angry about things. People take that story very personally.
It's a religion, it's like it's basically the Bible.
I know.
It's the third book of the Bible.
I know, but there will be a lot of hatred for me.
People take it personally.
A lot of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you need to brace yourself for, like internet comments are one thing.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of that stuff. I mean, that's just how it goes. But whatever. I mean, Joseph Smith's not a perfect person. Like, it's silly to pretend he was a perfect person. Everybody in the church should know, the polygamy stuff and everything. Like, everybody knows about that.
Yeah.
I'm just portraying it, which is like something that they don't really appreciate.
How have your thoughts about him evolved over the course of doing the book?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. Have they evolved? I guess I feel I know him better.
Let me put it this way, because this is sort of the debate around him. This is the debate around L. Ron Hubbard. Mm-hmm. Any like more contemporary religious figure. Do you think he was a believer
in his own church?
Do you think that he believed the stories he told?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Yeah. You know better than a lot of other people.
I don't think. I mean, I don't even want to say I don't think so because I'm afraid.
You're afraid of backlash.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that. It's tough because then other people say, there's like witnesses to the stuff that he's saying. So then you think like, what is their motivation? It's hard to say, man. It's really hard. I mean, like, what if you like declared yourself like a prophet, and then all these people are saying, yeah, you are, and then like you had years of people saying like you're a prophet. Wouldn't you start to believe some of that stuff? Like, wouldn't you start to think like maybe I am above all other men?
Do you get the sense though that was maybe his trajectory? That maybe by the end he believed a lot of it?
Probably, yeah, because Do you know what the last speeches he gave was called the King Follows Discourse? Did you? It's like that's where you basically say like it's the Mormon belief of every man is on earth to achieve godhood. So like you become a god yourself, and like that like our God was just a man like me and you at one time, and he worked in his life and achieved this godhood, which seems like the most. It's like. Of course you would say that if like you would. That's like the ultimate ego thing,
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
You can become a god. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think
Do you see any similarities between his trajectory and Lincoln's?
No.
No.
I think Lincoln was. I don't know if Joseph Smith was really a good person. He did a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if I feel comfortable saying he was a good person.
Your book about Lincoln is like very specifically about his
just that
struggles.
one, just that one point of his life. But I think Lincoln was actually a really good person. I'm a fan.
Do you? Oh, you're a fan of Abraham
Yeah,
Lincoln?
I'm a fan.
Okay. Well, did Joseph Smith? I know very little about his life other than some of the kind of the stories of the finding of the book and all that. Mm-hmm. Do you get the sense that he had, if not similar struggles, that he had kind of major struggles in his own life? Yeah,
absolutely. That's where it all comes from. I mean, he's from a very poor family. They were farmers, but they weren't good farmers. They made
this was
money.
Not in Utah.
This is all in Palmyra, New York,
okay.
Near Rochester.
Okay.
And
you have more of an excuse to be a bad farmer in Utah. I get the feeling.
Yeah, for sure. So his family was making money by using seer stones, like peep stones, and looking for buried treasure because, that part of America at that time had a bunch of those Native American mounds everywhere. Yeah. And people were digging into them because there was like a lot of like bronze and gold and
burial
stuff like
mounds.
Yeah. And so they got into the business of locating where that stuff was going to be. So like somebody would have a farm and they'd have like a native mound on it, and then you could hire Joseph Smith and his father or whatever and his brothers and be like, they would put the magic stone in the hat, and he would look in the hat and tell them like, oh, I see all this money, like it's over here or whatever, and we'll help you locate it if you pay us up front or something. So they would get paid, and then they would go look for the treasure. And I got all this stuff from the court documents because they were sued for this or taken to court for it. Yeah, and then they would be brought to the farm, and then they'd be digging where they said the treasure was going to be, and they wouldn't find anything, and they'd be like, oh, it's slippery treasure. Like the heat of the sun. We should have done this at night because like the heat of the sun makes the treasure go down further into the soil, so we can't find it. I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's like, did you watch that documentary about flat earthers, or have you researched that at all?
A little bit, yeah. I know. I mean, I just saw that guy who died.
Yeah. That as of the recording of this, that was like about a week, within the last week.
Yeah.
I do think it's fascinating to watch people try to discover that in real time.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there was maybe a sense of that with Joseph Smith and his family.
Well, they had a magic worldview back then. Everybody still believed in magic.
Yeah, there's a pretty clear. Again, I have a very cursory knowledge of Mormonism, but it sounds like there's a pretty clear line between the stone-based stuff that they were doing and these kind of ideas that built the foundation of the church.
Well, the way the Book of Mormon was translated, in quotes, is that he would have the golden plates that he had dug up underneath a handkerchief on the table because nobody was allowed to see them. Mm-hmm. He'd put his stone in his hat, and he would sit in his hat, and then he'd have a scribe sitting next to him writing down everything he said. And the stone was revealing to him the words that were on these plates. That's how it was done. And the Mormon, if you look up like Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon or whatever, it's like you get all these paintings from the church of Joseph Smith sitting there with these golden plates open, and he's reading them. And it wasn't like that at all. Like, nobody saw the golden plates except for him. And the three witnesses, apparently, who said, like, when he gave the plates back to the angel, there was, like, three of his friends there who said that they saw the angel with their own eyes, and they saw the plates. But that's it. Nobody else has ever seen these things. And he did it by looking at a stone in a hat,
The hat thing was literally taken from the stuff that his family was doing.
Yeah. It's just the same. I know, isn't that weird? Yeah, it's the same kind of, like...
It's not really weird. In hindsight, it's not really weird at all.
Yeah. But there's a lot of, and the peep stone itself, the church still owns it. They still have it. And they, you can look it up and see what it actually looked like and stuff. Eventually he stopped using that stone and started just sitting there basically with his eyes closed, like speaking, and then they would write down for like the revelations from the God and stuff, from God for that stuff. Even if the Book of Mormon is not what the church says it is, it's not something that came from a stack of golden plates that were like buried. It's still a pretty incredible piece of automatic writing. Like somebody could just sit in a hat and just speak these words, and somebody just writing them down.
Yeah,
It's like William Burroughs level.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, without the all of the cutting stuff out of magazines.
Yeah, but that gives it a lot of value.
He was channeling something.
Yeah, there's something there. And if you probably never read it, I assume. Right?
I haven't. No. I've been in a lot of hotels in the Southwest, but I have not actually read it.
It's pretty incredible, you know.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's really something. So, and that's another thing that like the church uses. Like, okay, well, if he didn't, because he's, you know, Joseph Smith was illiterate, so like they're like, you know, how could an illiterate man have done this book? I have no answer for that. I don't know where it came from. You know,
not even begrudging. In a sense, do you feel like you have a newfound respect for some of what he did?
Sure, yeah, he did a lot of stuff. I mean, he founded a very great religion that's still going, still growing as far as I know, and so...
You still have fondness for it?
Sure, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it brings people... I mean, I have siblings that are still in the church, and they're all happy. They got great families and stuff, so it serves that purpose. You know, a lot of people find a lot of happiness in it. So it's hard to be like, you know, some guy like who was like living in an apartment and is like, the Mormons are stupid or whatever, and then you go back to like watching Cartoon Network and you're just depressed. And then like you compare your life to people who believe in it and they're healthy and they got families. They're, you know, I don't know. I think it just serves its purpose like a lot of religions do. So
yeah.
It's hard to diss.
It gives people meaning in a very meaningless world.
And I don't want to. And making fun of people's faith is not very nice. It's not a good thing to do.
In those early days, again, when you felt like you couldn't draw at all and it was painful for you, did you ever come close to just kind of packing it in?
No, I never did. I just kept going. I mean, I also had like a delusion, which is basically what Fante Bukowski is about. Like I had that self-protective delusion. Yeah. Where I was just like, I'm great. Yeah. I'm a great artist. Like, no, everybody hates me, but it's because they're wrong.
So there's a lot of you in that book.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's something that's how you survive is you just be like, I'm really great. I'm a true artist, and these people just can't see it. They can't deal with what I'm doing.
That's an important aspect of it, because a thing you very much risk with a character like that is, you know, kind of making fun of other people. Mm-hmm. But you feel like a lot of that was essentially pointing the camera at yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then to kind of distract that's what I was doing, I made myself a character in the story.
Yeah, the prestige.
To be like, I'm not Fante, look, I'm right here. Yeah. That's me right there, and then just make myself just a horrible... turn myself into like the villain of that story, you know.
Why was it important to distract from that?
I just thought it was funny. I was getting that question a lot of like... Are you Fante? Is that you?
And the answer is...
No, I'm right here.
But the real answer is maybe a little bit
absolutely.
At least.
I mean, that's how you learn to write something like that, is like you kind of have to experience that. You kind of have to feel those feelings of like, I'm going to go to a Dave Eggers signing and give him my mini comics, which I actually did. I actually did do that. And he didn't want them, you know. No. He said the same thing, like it's the same line. They go,
send it to my publisher or agent. Yeah.
Or somebody will say like, oh, something to read on the plane. That's what they always, I've heard that line so many times. Because I used to do that all the time. Like if there was like an author signing, I'd go there and give him my mini comic.
Has that made you more sympathetic when you're at shows and people hand you their comics?
Yeah, I don't know. I take everything and I'll read it. Yeah. Doesn't mean I won't necessarily always like it, but I'll read it. I mean, I remember Dan Clowes saying that, like, I read whatever people give me. He always makes time to do that, and I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. So
yeah, it makes you, you know, when you have those moments in your own life where you're just like ignoring emails or ignoring Twitter or maybe not being like, you know, super nice to people who come up to you at shows. When you look at somebody like that and they're taking the time to do it, you're like, I have absolutely no excuse to be an asshole to other people.
Right. Let me sit down and look at this.
You gave a reading a couple years ago, and there was I think a really kind of fascinating quote about where you felt like you were at the time. You said, I don't think I'm where I want to be, but I'm closer.
Yeah.
And, you know, a couple of years removed from that, are you where you want to be?
No, not yet. Yeah, we'll get there. It's still a struggle. You know, I had like the idea of like what the perfect drawing style would be like for me. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Is it a specific person's style? Is there somebody?
No, it's there's like a confident looseness that I really want. I want to be able to just loosely draw something the same way every time. Yeah. You know, what happened was I went to Angoulême in 2015, and I just saw the way that they were drawing, and they had that style where it was just like, it just seemed like so much fun. There was like so much like joy in their drawing style there.
Yeah, like Trondheim's got that sort of almost like Schultz.
Spar.
Yeah, that Schultz style, right?
Yeah. Like you simplify it. Yeah. You got to That's what cartooning is all about. Like, I need to learn how to like reduce things to some kind of like simplicity. I mean, I'm getting there. Like, I think people will see that with the Joseph Smith book. It's very the style is very breezy for me. Like, it's not heavily cross-hatched or anything like that. So I'm still working on that as I get more and more comfortable drawing, because I'm not a natural artist. So it's been like learning how to draw and learning how to be a cartoonist for the past 15 years, you know?
It's having an older brother who is a
comic book artist.
Yeah,
not a cartoonist.
Not a cartoonist, but somebody who draws comics for a living.
Yeah.
Was that a motivator?
Well, that was a way of like seeing him as an example at the time, going back to that time where I just felt like I don't know what options I have in life. I'll be working at this Panera Bread. Seeing him as an example of somebody from my family who just kept going with comics, you know, because comics were a big thing in my family. It was like the one thing that my father like encouraged us to read besides the Bible or the Book of Mormon or something. So seeing him like actually take it seriously and do successful books and stuff like that.
It's funny because a lot of cartoonists I talk to say that, you know, like until I was like so and so, I didn't know that this was a thing you can do for a living. But you did at the very least have an example of somebody who was able to do it.
And at the time I got into cartooning, I think he was like named like Wizard Artist of the Year or something. It was like, wow, like. But I realized kind of quickly that I could never do what he can do.
Yeah.
I don't have that skill set.
Well, he's what, like 10 years, 15 years, 10 years older? That's a fairly significant gap, but you must have at least seen him kind of spend some time banging his head against the wall.
Yeah, when he was a teen. But the thing is, like, we like, basically at the end of that book, One Dirty Tree, I just didn't see him anymore. My mom took us, the younger kids, to Arizona. He stayed in New Jersey and did whatever, like, and I just wasn't really raised with him from that point on. So, like, I'm not really that close with him, but I remember growing up and seeing him in like in the attic drawing, and he started from the bottom too. Like that stuff was pretty rough. But he was more of a natural artist than I was, and I had other brothers, Josiah and Micah, and they were also into comics. They just didn't try and take it professionally. So it was just like a thing all the guys did. You know?
I mean, obviously, like there's not going to be an exact moment where you're like, oh, I've cracked this style, perhaps. But do you get the feeling that even when you get closer to or get exactly there, that your style will continue to evolve? Do you think that that's just something you're going to continue chasing for the rest of your career?
I hope so. I would hate to arrive somewhere. You know, you don't want to plateau. Like, I want to just keep working in everything I do, get better, because that was another rule of mine when I had just started getting into comics. Was I was like, okay, I'll take this as seriously as I can as something I can do with my life, but at the end of every year, like, I'll kind of take stock of how the year went, and if it didn't get better than the year previous, then I'll quit this and just go do something else, because I don't know if I can actually even do this. So I'm gonna have to see some kind of results. And so I lived like that, and I still kind of live like that, where I go, okay, what happened this year? Like, does it seem like it's getting better? And so far it has every year, so I just keep going forward.